All right, guys, welcome back to another video in our JavaScript series. This is our second video. We just did a brief introduction in the last video. So now in this video, we're going to get into a few more details here. So basically, I'm going to delete out this script up here, and I'm going to delete out this button. We're not going to need either of those, and I'm going to run it just like this. So I have a script tag down here, and the source for that is going to be our script.js. So go ahead and save that HTML file and then open up that script.js. And you'll remember last time I told you we had three different types of quotes here. We had our single quotes, and then we have our double quotes, and then we have our backticks. So let's just briefly talk about the difference between each one of these. And this double slash, by the way, means that this is a comment. So you can either actually push double slash, or if I just hold down Control and then if I push the slash, VS Code will automatically make that whole line a comment. So that's typically how I do it, because then you don't have to think real quickly like, oh, well, in HTML file, if I want to make a comment, I do it like that. But if I'm in a CSS file and I want to make a comment, I do it like that. But if I'm in a JavaScript file and I want to make a comment, then I need to do it like that. And if you don't know, and it's you just don't want to take the time to think about it, to do a comment really quickly, if you just hit Control and then hit the question mark key or that backslash key, it's gonna make you whatever comment you need for the code file that you're in. So here I've got my single quotes, and this is basically used for plain text and no special characters. And also no expressions, no special characters or expressions. And these double quotes are pretty much going to be the same thing with one important distinction, and that's going to be that basically it's plain text with no special characters except the single quote and no expressions. And then down here for this is going to take text, special characters, as well as expressions. So what do I mean by all of that? Well, let's give a few examples here. So if I come down here and write console.log, and in here, if I put double quotes and I say this is Tim's JavaScript file. Now, if I save that, you can see that works just fine, and it prints this is Tim's JavaScript file. But I have this single quote or this apostrophe inside of my double quotes. So if I were to come here and replace the outer quotes with a single quote, well, now it doesn't know how to read this because I've got my single quote here as an apostrophe, but it thinks that that is the end of my string, and then it doesn't know what to make of this value here. So pretty much the way that a string works when you're assigning it in JavaScript is you're going to have opening quotes and then closing quotes, and then whatever you put inside of these two quotes, this is going to be whatever data is in your string. And if, for example, I needed to have an apostrophe there and say strings text, that's okay because I have the double quotes, so it still knows that because these are double quotes, this single quote in the middle, or this apostrophe, is not closing the first double quote. But if I have a single quote and then I say string or strings text, now I have one single quote, two single quotes, and then, whoops, I guess I wrote a double quote in that last one again. And then this one, it's going to see that and think, oh, here's our third single quote. But this one is actually supposed to be an apostrophe. So if I just come in and write it like this is not going to work. However, if I put a backslash in front of that, then I can escape that character, meaning even though this would naturally be interpreted as the closing quote for this, if I use a backslash, it's going to escape that meaning, or it's going to escape that single quote, and it will be printed out just like an apostrophe should be. So if I save that, now you see that works just fine. And also what I mean when I say text, special characters, and expressions. So just like in the last video, if I have a, well, let's just have a few variables here. So I'll say const number 1 is equal to 1, and const number 2 is equal to 2. I'm being very creative with my values today. Now, if I come inside of here and say console.log, and then inside of here, if I say, if I do back quotes or back ticks rather, and in here, if I say number 1 plus number 2 is equal to, we'll put 3. If I save that, now you see I literally get number 1 plus number 2 is equal to 3. It's exactly what I wrote there. But if I want to get actually the value that's inside of my number 1 value, I want to do this a little bit differently. If I put a $sign and then curly brackets and put number 1 inside of the curly brackets, now if I save that, you can see number 1 has been converted into the value, even though it says number 1 there, because this is in blue, that's telling you that this number 1 is a reference to this number 1 up here that we have assigned to 1. And same thing here, if I were to cut out number 2 and say $sign number 2, so now I have 1, a 2, and then 3. So if I save that, now I get 1 plus 2 equals 3. Well, that's cool. I can actually reference my variables directly inside of my backticks or inside of what we call a string template. And using that, I can essentially output whatever I need my string, whatever format I need my string to take based on the data. But this number 3, obviously, I had to hard code that. So what if I changed number 2 to like 3 or 4? Well, now this statement is not true, right? 1 plus 4 equals 3. Well, no, it should be 5. So I could come in here and change that to 5, but really that kind of defeats the whole purpose of coding and programming. Like, we're writing code so that we don't have to do the math ourselves. So another thing you can do inside of a string template is you can not just evaluate a number, but you can evaluate an entire expression. So if I do $sign and then quotes, in here, if I say number 1 plus number 2, so now what this is going to do, because both of these, number 1 plus number 2, because those are within the same pair of brackets here with only one single $sign, it means that all of this is going to be evaluated and then converted into a string and output in our log. So now let's put a semicolon after that. And if I do Control S to save my file, now you can see 1 plus 4 equals 5. And no matter what number I put here, it's always going to be right. So I don't have to keep going and checking it manually. So that's what I mean by an expression, is I can have basically, I can use variables and I can actually do operations and calculations inside of my string template, and it will output the number. Now in here, I can also put single quotes and double quotes, and I just need to type them just like I would type them normally. And if I save that, you can see I get single quotes and double quotes. I don't need to escape them or anything like that. In fact, if I come in here and do escape it, it doesn't make any difference at all. So you can, but you don't have to. So that's what we're looking at there. Now you'll notice we have the plus sign there. Well, let's just go over real quickly a couple different operations that we have. The first one you have is, of course, that plus. So console.log, and in here, if I say, 2 plus 1, so that's going to be our addition. So 2 plus 1 is 3. Also, if I were to go ahead and copy this line a few times, you have your subtraction is minus, your division is just going to, or your multiplication, let's do that one, is our asterisk, which is that little spiky ball on your 8 key. If you hold shift and hit 8, you'll get an asterisk. And then down here, instead of a plus, let's do division. So we've got addition, subtraction, multiplication, and finally down here we have division. And I'll show you one more. So if I save this, you can see I get 3, 1, 2, 2. So that all looks good, but there's one more operator that you have in pretty much every programming language, and that's going to be your modulus operator, which you may or may not have learned about in school. So if I come in here and type like 149, and then the percent sign, which is going to be our modulus division, and then here, if I just type 10, now, if I go ahead and save that line, you can see 149 divided by 10 gives us 9. And if you remember long division, let me just show you real quickly what that's doing. If you think back to school and you look at your long division, so we have 149 and we want to divide that by 10. So basically 10 times what equals to 140? Well, that's going to be 14, and then we put 140 down there, minus, and then we get 9. We have remainder 9. So this 9 right here is what we get from our 149 modulus division 10. So you can see that that modulus division function is actually just giving you, basically, it's giving you the remainder from your division. We also in here can log arrays directly into our console. So if you don't know what an array is, it's essentially a collection of different elements that is going to be stored in a row or sequentially in memory that we can then access and loop through that array and do different functions on it. But we'll get to that part later. Basically, it's a collection of elements, and in JavaScript and in most programming languages, arrays go inside of these square brackets here. So if I just have a list of letters, or numbers rather, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I were to go ahead and save that, now you see I get this list of numbers that I can even click on this and expand it. And this is my array of length 5. Now, one thing to note about an array is you'll see here it says 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, and 4, 5. So basically on the left here in light blue, this is going to be your array index. And that means your position in the array. And because computers start counting at 0, because that's really the most efficient way for them to count, the first index in every array is going to be index 0. So even though it's number 1, this is index 0. So an array, if I were to draw this out in paper, or rather on my computer screen, if I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I wanted to get the first index in this array, meaning the first element, that's going to be this one here, and that is index 0. If I wanted to get the third element in the array, that'd be 1, 2, 3. That's this guy right here, and that is actually going to be index 2. Because basically what's happening is you're starting your index counting from 0, so you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, that's what all these light blue numbers in the log are over here, and then the purple numbers are the actual value inside the array. So that's how you make an array. And in JavaScript, if you're familiar with other programming languages, this may surprise you, but in JavaScript, you don't actually need these all to be the same type. You could put different types of objects inside of here, and basically I can put different types of objects inside my array. And if I save that now, you see I have my first array, which is just the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. And then my second array is 1, 2, and then spelled out as a string, 3, 4. And then here, this is actually what we call an object prototype, which it looks basically like this, where you have opening curly brackets and then closing curly brackets. And you essentially have a key and a value pair is what we call it. So here our key is value, and then our value that it's paired with is 5 in quotes, which means that's a string. So that's called a prototype object. And then here, because that's in quotes, that is also going to be a string. And then these are all number types here. So in an array in JavaScript, this is a very flexible language. You can actually put different data types or different types of variables inside of the same array. On the console log, you also have a console.warning. And if I type this and then put something in here, this is a warning, and save that, you can see now that shows up in my log over here, and it shows up in yellow. And if I were to come over here and say console.error and say this is an error, you could probably guess that's going to show up with a red highlight on it. So that's how you can put warning and error messages inside of your log. And then the other thing that I'll mention down here is if I come down here and type console.clear, save that. Well, now that's actually going to clear out the entire console. You can see console was cleared up there. So instead of putting that in my script file, if I were to comment that line out and save this once more, if I come over here and type console.clear and then put parentheses, opening and closing parentheses after that, and if I hit enter now, you could see it clears out that console. So that's what that line does. And anytime you want to clear out your entire console, that can be quite useful. And we really actually should have semicolons on the end of these. Here, it won't actually technically make a difference. And in JavaScript, you don't really need it all the time, but it's generally considered best practice to always put the semicolon at the end of the lines, because sometimes you do need it. And if you don't have that semicolon there, it can potentially lead to bugs that are difficult to debug at times. So we're always going to put that there. And let's say if I look at this code and I say, hey, I want to know maybe how long all of my math operations are taking, I can actually time specific operations in JavaScript just by using a console.time and a console.timeEnd. So here we could say these operations took, and then if I come down here and say console.time, let me just actually copy this whole line up here. If I just simply paste that there, and at the bottom, if I say time end instead of time, and now go ahead and save that file, you can see right here, after all of my math operations, I get these operations took and then 0.0559 milliseconds. So that is how you can actually time operations inside your JavaScript, and you can see exactly how long things are taking. Another thing that I'll mention here, I told you earlier, right? If we highlight a line, or even if you don't highlight it, if you just click on it and do Control and then your slash, or which is the question mark key down by the shift on the right side of your keyboard, we can use that to comment out lines. But also I can comment out a bunch of lines at one time if I highlight all of them, or I can uncomment out a bunch of lines. But also in JavaScript, there's another way. You'll notice if I do all of these lines at one time, it just essentially makes all of these a single line comment. But there's such a thing as a multi-line comment or a block line comment. And basically what that is it's going to open with a slash and then an asterisk, and then it's going to close with those same two characters in the opposite order. So asterisk and then a slash. And now anything between the opening slash asterisk and the closing asterisk slash is going to be commented out, even though you'll notice on all of these, you don't have these double slashes at the beginning of all the lines. So if I were to cut that and move that up to here, now all of these are commented out, but these are not. So that's just another way to do multi-line comments in JavaScript, and actually a bunch of other programming languages as well. So hopefully you've learned something in this video. We talked a lot about the console log operations and string templates and arrays. We talked about warnings and errors and how to clear your console, how to time things in your code. So this is all just part of the building blocks of the JavaScript knowledge that we need to retain and learn and then practice. So take this, practice it a bunch. we'll see you in the next video as we keep learning JavaScript.